Hello everybody and welcome to the Robert H. Wilde True Crime Show. Welcome everyone in chat. Steve, Sydney, Ditch Boy. Firstly, I'd like to show off that I do listen to your comments, because I now have a new scene where cat cam is inserted. So you will be able to see the cat's bum and still see me. This is for instances where, and when the cat's being cute, we can do that. But in fact, you can actually see the cat through the door. Polly may come in, she may not come in, but we can now do that. So there we go. You see, I do pay attention. Also, I want to begin by saying, I've said a couple of times on this stream, if there's a topic or even a particular crime you would like me to cover on this show, do let me know and I will do my best. And tonight is the first one of our viewer requested stories. Would anybody in chat like to guess what we're going to cover? We've got 3 stories, and the first one was written yesterday and today for one of our viewers. No, right. The thing is, Ditch, every time I've asked this, I've said, guess what we're going to do? You've said one thing, and I've done it. And now I ask you, and you've said tortoise detective. No. No. Sadly, I did not have tortoise detective on the list. Yes, I know. We are going to be doing Barratry first. Then we're going to be doing the Wall Street bombing. Not the one you may be familiar with, but a historical case, which I found very interesting. And then at the end, we're going to do a particularly... well, it's not a mysterious serial killer, because we know everything about them, but how they were discovered and what they did will be coming up. That one's a bit of a grim one, but we've got 2 rather... lighter ones to start with, sort of. Yes, you're not a bully, but I do listen. I've said if people want me to cover something. So why don't we kick off with a bit of Barratry? Everyone else in chat is now going, what on earth are you two talking about? So the word Barratry has had multiple legal meanings over the centuries it's been in use. Now, in 2024, it most commonly refers to when a lawyer files frivolous lawsuits on behalf of a client just to get the fees from them. Oh yeah, talk about Barratry as opposed to commit. It's going to be very easy for me not to commit Barratry, as I am nowhere near a boat. And as you will be, I've just realised, this is because Barratry has a maritime law meaning. And a Barratry is when the master or a crew of a ship act in a way that damages the vessel or cargo to the detriment of the owner. Now, I don't mean a mutiny. That's when the crew take over and run off. This is things like destroying the ship or damaging the cargo to profit for yourself and at the loss of the owners. So obviously, having explained that, I need to give you an interesting story about Barratry. Obviously, there's quite a lot of nautical history to talk about, but interestingly, Barratry can be quite hard to get a conviction for. In America, firstly it's a pretty obscure crime, but in the United States, for many years, it was almost impossible to get a conviction for Barratry, and this is nothing to do with proving whether you've done it or not. Many people could easily be proved to have committed Barratry, but they were still not convicted by the jury. Why, you may be wondering? Well, we're going to get to that. And I've got a story which both illustrates all of this and also ties into something very, very famous. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Barratry of the Mary Celeste. Wait, I don't mean the famous bit with the Mary Celeste. I'm sure everyone is familiar. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the fact that the Mary Celeste was found drifting in the Atlantic, and nobody really knows what happened to their crew. It's most likely something caused them to get into a lifeboat, which then got loose and they all died. But it became a very famous story with many legends and all sorts of things, and it's hugely famous. That's not Barratry. In fact, that's the opposite of Barratry, because the ship and the cargo were fine, and it's the crew that had gone. But the Mary Celeste didn't get destroyed after that. It was sailed back to port, and it went on to have a third of its life. And at the end of that life, it was destroyed in an act of Barratry. So, we are going to discuss what that was and how the Mary Celeste was eventually destroyed. I would like to point out the name of the ship is Mary Celeste, Mary. You will often see it spelt. Sorry, no, Sydney, no. So, Barratry is when the ship is when the captain and the crew do something to either a ship or the cargo that damages it to the detriment of the owner. So, a mutiny where people rebel and sail the ship off, that's not Barratry. That's sort of a different level of rules. Taking over a ship in sort of piracy, if you're a pirate and you attack a ship, that's not Barratry, because you're just thieving and stealing. It's specifically where the crew act against the owner, and mostly this is to do with claiming, with ripping insurance off or selling the products on, and just making a way to take the money away. So, and this is what we'll get to with the Mary Celeste. So it's not Marie. That is a misspelling that was introduced by some very fanciful stories. It is Mary, Mary. So we joined the Mary Celeste. The crew had all gone, but the ship remained, and that ship was worth money. But it was worth a lot less money than it would have been, because the inquest in the investigation into the missing crew. I'm naughty for setting an obscure crime. You are, but I think I've managed to tie it to something very not obscure, which was good fun investigating. So the Mary Celeste case turned into a world-famous set of rumours and myths, which meant people shied away from actually buying or using the Mary Celeste herself. For a while, she sat rotting in a dock until February 1877, when a group in New York purchased her and set her to work. She was sent to the seas around India, but frequently lost money, and in one instance her captain, Edgar Tuthill, became ill and died, having to have an emergency stop at St. Helena. This was the third captain of the Mary Celeste to die earlier than they would very much have hoped, and the rumours of a curse flared back up. In 1880, the New Yorkers sold the ship to a group of Bostonians, and Captain Thomas Fleming took over. It's unclear what the ship did during this period, but in August 1884, Captain Gilman C. Parker took over the ship. Parker was not going to become the fourth captain to have an early death. Oh no, he was going to make sure of that. He organised a plan. Fill the cargo with trash, list it as valuable items, and insure it for what today would be $1 million, which he did. Then he sailed to Haiti. On January 3rd, 1885, he neared the port and aimed for the gap between Gonave Island and Haiti itself, in which there was a famous and very well mapped coral reef, which he sailed directly onto, ripping the bottom of the boat out and turning the Mary Celeste into a hopeless shipwreck. That was the end of her life. The crew rowed to shore in prepared boats, and here Parker made a mistake. He sold the salvage rights to the American consul, and then began the process of claiming the $1 million. However, the consul, with the salvage rights, did a bit of salvage, discovered it was all trash, and told the insurers. One investigation later, and Parker and his conspirators were arrested and charged with insurance fraud and Barratry. The insurance trial was held first. Why? Well, here's the thing. Barratry was illegal in the US in this period, but almost nobody was ever convicted for it, even if they were obviously very guilty men, because the punishment was death. Very few jurors wanted to commit somebody to execution for damaging a ship or its cargo. And this played out here. The jurors in the fraud trial didn't want to convict Parker of fraud in case it made his trial for Barratry worse. They did not want to contribute to his potential execution, so they could not agree a verdict. The judge then decided not to spend the large sum a retrial would need, and the fraud charge was dropped if the defendants paid their part of their money back, and the Barratry charge would be deferred. This agreement was all done. Parker and his friends were now free. Sort of. I don't know if you believe in karma or any sort of God striking you down or anything like that. But it did not go very well for Parker and his friends. One of the defendants went insane very quickly. One killed themselves very quickly. And the now financially ruined Parker died only 3 months after the trial, a broken man. However, within a couple of years, the US legal system decided they would they would change the punishment for Barratry so it was no longer a capital offence, and people would now start to be more convicted. So that is the Barratry of the Mary Celeste, and how the fourth captain died very early. So, yeah, what do we think of that? Cursed ship. Yes, exactly. It's impressive that in effect 4 people managed to have 4 captains had unnaturally early deaths because of it. Even if some of it was their own fault, but yeah. We've not been joined by any fluffies. So let's have a chat with chat. How are you all doing? Give you a schedule update. The current plan. Interesting that people weren't convicted because the punishment was harsh. Yes, exactly. It is a recorded fact that people weren't willing to get people executed over things that they felt was too harsh. In this instance, boats, ships. I'm going to be honest. Despite writing that story, I don't know the difference between a boat and a ship. So, sorry, nautical people. Feel free to complain. Yeah. So the planned schedule for next week is that there won't be a Tuesday stream, but there'll be the much longer spooky stream on Thursday. Work selecting that material has begun. I hope you're going to enjoy it. If enjoy is the right word, you know. Thank you. Sydney says there's not much of a difference between a vessel, a boat, and a ship. Okay. Cool. So Ditch Boys just managed to dig up a bit of Wikipedia with a very modern reference. In Tom Clancy's 1984 novel The Hunt for Red October, the character Admiral Foster remarks that the apparent theft of the eponymous Soviet submarine Red October by Captain Marco Ramius and his officers with the intention of defecting with the submarine constitutes Barratry and not mutiny. Hello, Tegon. Good to see you. Hope you are well. Yep, a fictional example. I wanted to give you something a bit different. I didn't want to just go, oh yeah, in 1992, the ship you've never heard of carrying sand, or something like that. I thought, but when I realised that I could do the Mary Celeste, I was like, yes. Thank you, great story. Thank you very much. Right, so let's move on to our next topic this evening. I'm not going to tell you the name again. I'm just going to give you the intro, and then we'll circle round. So, a bomb detonates in the middle of a packed major city. 38 people die, over 100 are injured. Something you would see on the news now, perhaps, but this happened in Wall Street in New York in 1920, and the perpetrators were never officially caught. And yet the story seems to have dropped out of the modern memory. You'd think it might be better remembered. At the time, terrorism and bombing in America was not rare. This sort of thing is not new. It's been there a long time, and in America it was not rare. Disparate groups of anarchists, communists, socialists and other were carrying out terror campaigns designed to destabilise the US system. In fact, in 1919 there had been a series of bombs in several cities. What was different is the Wall Street bombing would be far, far bigger. In fact, it was the deadliest terror attack in the US until the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. Never heard of this story before. Excellent, that's right, there is a poll. Would chat like to nominate crimes for the show to talk on? Yes or no? Let's go. I will. How long is this poll, Ditch? Shall I wait and discuss this poll, or shall I do a bit more crime? 3 minutes. Let's see what the poll says. Yes, I'm absolutely up for covering topics you may want me to cover. I mean. I say that hoping somebody comes along and goes, oh, please tell me about the toolbox killers, and not, please can we have a crime story about parrots. But if we have to do the latter, we have to do the latter. In fact, you will be surprised, in fact you probably won't be surprised, there are quite a few true crime stories solved by parrots. It's looking very much like we would like chapter number, I think. Parrots right next poll is about which animal. Could the poll just be 3 versions of parrots? Because I know where they are. Not the parrots, the material. No promise. I mean, look, if somebody manages to have a poll that nominates which crime was solved by a panda, I'm going to disappoint you, aren't I? Can we keep this slightly realistic? Like dogs, parrots, tortoises and weasels. Look, the only crime weasels have been involved in are about other furry animals. I feel like a weasel crime is something that would be in the Annals of Farthing Wood if it was on later at night. I saw an episode. I saw quite a lot of the Annals of Farthing Wood at the time, and then a few years later I tuned into an episode, and I never watched it ever again because a couple of basically a hedgehog had a panic attack in the middle of the road. Another hedgehog helped them, and they both got run over. And I was like, well, that's a singularly depressing piece of children's entertainment. Not really sure I ever need to see that again. Shall I vote in my own poll? Yes, why not? Tortoise with him of a slow getter. Hello, Foxy. Good to see you, Foxy. Don't know how long you've been here. We've just done a Mary Celeste adjacent story. By adjacent, I mean we didn't do any of the weird stuff. We did something very few people know about it. But so the poll has finished. Hello, Steve. Hello, Foxy. So the poll is yes, people could nominate crimes and topics, which I like. I'm glad everybody wanted us to do that. That's positive. I approve of that. I have a feeling I'm not going to approve of the next poll. But that's not really the point, is it? Oh, hello, Polly. Good to see you. Will I be able to use my new scene, Polly? Or are you going to just sit there, just off camera? You're a bit of a diva, aren't you? Polly had some catnip yesterday and has spent the entire day begging me for drugs, basically. Oh, yes. I'm not sure if it's popular etiquette to give your cat strokes while you're streaming to an audience, but it is what it is. Where we go? Oh, you're right. Where are we going, Polly? Right. Look at, right, we get to use the new scene. Oh, look at, oh, okay, so it is Obama again, but at least you still got my face. Hello, Polly. Oh, no. Right, you're leaving. Well, you know, at least I got to use what I did this evening. Nice tail. Cat bomb. No, before anyone asks, we're not having a cat bomb emote. Only the nice end. Oh, you're sitting on the mouse, which may make looking at my bullet points slightly harder. Hang on. No, that's not going to work. Right. I'll turn that off now. Right, well, she's wondering about. Let's get into some more of. Oh God. Should the next emote be a cat bomb? Yeah, sorry for having the cough. Sometimes you have a cough and you sort of go into space and it takes you like 60 seconds to return into the room. That's what just happened. But I'm back now. Polly has left and knocked a few things over, which is why we'll have her. I'll stop. Who's voting yes? You weren't expecting the poll to have that sort of reaction. I'm not blaming the poll solely on you, but I mean, you do realise there's absolutely no chance that Twitch would actually allow that. So, who knows? Okay, while the poll concludes, let's get on with the Wall Street bombing. So, at midday on September 16th, 1920, a horse-drawn wagon pulled to a halt opposite the base of J.P. Morgan & Co. Bank on 23 Wall Street. This was known as the Corner. It was the place with the greatest concentration of financial power on Wall Street. The intersection of Wall Street and Broad Street. The New York Stock Exchange was close. J.P. Morgan's, at that time America's strongest bank, was on it. This was the most densely filled area of Wall Street, and the timing was precise because at midday the staff of Wall Street took their lunch break and the street became packed with people trying to make the most of it. Inside the wagon was 100 pounds of dynamite and 500 pounds of broken up window weights. These were essentially cast iron, 2 inches long and a inch and a quarter in diameter. The person who'd driven the wagon left, and at 1 minute past 12, the timer detonated. The explosion was huge. The explosion alone was huge, but it sent sash weights flying at lethal speeds in all directions. It sent chunks of wagon flying at lethal speeds in all directions. And the windows of the buildings were shattered, and they turned into even more lethal weapons. This was so large an explosion, an entire car was thrown through the air. We have a winner. Let's hope for it, which is policies are quite strict. 38 people and the horse were killed outright. Some practically ceased to exist. Another 8 who were injured died soon after from their wounds, and 143 people were deemed to be seriously injured, with a sort of limb loss and life-changing damage. These were mostly the low-ranking staff of Wall Street, the people who'd be rushing around like clerks and stenographers. However, millionaire John Gordon Steele was obliterated. They simply found one finger with his ring on it, which is how they identified him. Junior Spencer Morgan, son of J.P. Morgan, suffered a small cut. Yes, Ditch, who knew? Who knew? Reporter George Weston survived the blast by being stood in a strong doorway. He wrote, almost in front of the steps leading up to the Morgan Bank was the mutilated body of a man. Other bodies, most of them silent in death, lay nearby. As I gazed horror-stricken at the sight, one of these forms, half naked and sitted with burns, started to rise. It struggled, toppled, and fell into the gutter. Sorry about that, everyone. Just had to take a pause. Hello, King Cobra. Welcome in. Glad to see you. Yes, Ditch. This is 1920. King Cobra is a streamer. Thank you for giving the shout out. Do check them out. The blast wrecked windows over a considerable distance. It was so strong, a trolley bus 2 blocks away came off its tracks. And the property damage was immense. Now, the J.P. Morgan building is a sturdy stone structure, so it remains standing. This stone was scarred, and these stones are still visible today. In fact, at the time of writing this, which was not today, those scars are the only visible marks and remains of this explosion. There is no plaque or anything like that. Again, that was at time of writing. You'd think they might have put one up. If this was London, there'd be something there. So that sounds really sort of globally confrontational. I didn't mean that. Fun fact: Foxy used to work in acquisitions at J.P. Morgan. Well, it's a good thing you didn't have a time machine and be in a different continent. We're going to get to a bit of J.P. Morgan news in a minute. You may be wondering where J.P. Morgan was. I know, I can tell you where he was. However, the interior was wrecked. A severed head was left stuck to the front of the building, still wearing her hat. However, J.P. Morgan had installed wire screens on the windows, which is why its employees inside were mostly safe. Today, the damage would be equivalent to $29 million. New York Stock Exchange trading was suspended within a minute. The air was thick with dust. There was smoke from fires, and the street was just a mass of rubble, smashed cars, debris, and what was once people. As emergency services dashed to the scene, a number of heroes emerged. Survivors came running out to try and help. Perhaps most notable of these was James Seel. He was a 17-year-old runner. He borrowed a nearby car and in 4 trips got 30 people to hospital, and then he handed the car back to the police. To be fair, the emergency services did pretty much the same, and within an hour soldiers arrived fully armed, just in case. However, I said the stock exchange had closed within a minute. While the stock exchange could be argued to have caused a bit of a problem at this point, because the heads of the stock exchange met and decided that to retain confidence in the financial system they had to open as normal the next day. Therefore they rushed to clear and reset out the area, and next day business did resume as normal. And there was also a rally planned. The Sons of the American Revolution were going to do a different rally, but they used the intersection as a focus to show we're still in business. Unfortunately, all this haste probably destroyed evidence that could have helped the investigation. And let's face it, the investigation really needed more help than it got. Initially, the Bureau of Investigation had no idea what was going on. They did not initially think, oh, this is a terrorist attack. There didn't seem to be a target, just lots of people and buildings. Even J.P. Morgan didn't think they were a target. Morgan's partner, Mr. Lamont, said, if anybody really plotted the destruction of our building, I believe that we would have been sent the warning that is usual in such instances. I believe the explosion was due to nothing more than an unfortunate accident. Department of Justice agent Frank Francisco agreed, saying if an attempt had been made on the Morgan offices, I believe it would have been made at night, or some radical would have secured a position in the institution and planted an infernal machine inside. These are all really naive statements, because a few years before, J.P. Morgan himself had only narrowly survived being shot twice in an assassination attempt. So it was absolutely possible that an accident. Well, at this point, they hadn't found the timer ditch. And we're going to get that. So we're coming immediately on to how there could have how in New York in 1920 there could have been an accidental massive explosion. In this day and age, that's not really a thing. However, in New York in 1920 there was an awful lot of building work, and this building work used explosives. So the police sought out everyone who was transporting and selling and using explosives to see if they'd suffered a catastrophic transport accident. Permits were issued for the transport, storage and use. There were stocks of explosives only a few hundred yards from the incident. All stocks were found to be safe. There was a black market in trading dynamite. Beverly Gage discovered this while researching her book, The Wall Street Explosion. She found there were interviews saying you always see carts of explosives going through the neighbourhood, and I always think how dangerous. So yeah, the idea that there may accidentally have been a massive explosion was not unusual, because it was not unusual for large quantities of explosives to be trawled through the streets at any time. Obviously, health and safety regulations have advanced a lot since then. I regret to disappoint you, Tegan. I can give you no more information about whose head it was. I put the head in, but I do not know the name. I cannot follow that up. He was wearing the hat, though. Hello, Rico. Nice to see you. Welcome in. It was at this point, after having checked for rogue explosives, that the investigators began to focus on, was this a deliberate bombing of this area? Soon into the investigation, William Burns, head of the Burns Detective Bureau, told the New York Times there was not the slightest doubt that it was a bomb which caused the explosion. It might be close to the truth to say it was a wagon full of bombs. It soon became apparent through the location that this was an act of terrorism, but no one had already or ever would claim to have done it. Nobody ever said this was us. Obviously, this does make it slightly harder for the police to work out who's done it. When somebody sends a message in going it was us, that kind of shortens the investigation a bit. Yes. Tegan's saying one must remain suitably dressed even in death. I genuinely think that fashion and style was certainly strict there, and they would probably have been aghast to discover they were unhatted in public if that had happened. I feel that comment's veering towards poor taste. So, it was quite obvious somebody had put a bomb in a capitalist heartland. So the attention turned to left-wing groups like socialists and anarchists. On September 17th, the Bureau of Investigation revealed something. They had found a batch of flyers that had been left in the area shortly before the explosion. They said, in red ink, "Remember, we will not tolerate any longer. Free the political prisoners, or it will be sure death for all of you, American anarchists fighters." This seemed too much of a coincidence, so the anarchists got the blame. We'll get back to who may have done this in a minute. There is a favoured suspect, and it's not really hugely to do with broad anarchist aims, we'll say that. The Bureau of Investigation were hoping to find the remains of the driver, but he wasn't there. Witnesses saw him leaving the area. As best we know, he left the area, but they couldn't give a clear description, and he was never found. The witnesses couldn't even agree what colour the smoke was, which would have helped them determine the type of explosive quicker. However, witness statements also suggested the driver hadn't just legged it out of the country. He had stayed nearby to see how the bomb fared. So let me give you a story from the New York Times in 1920. One of the witnesses questioned at the place of the explosion told a story that indicated a bomb suspect had stood nearby. The witness, whose name Mr. Talley did not recall, was employed at reconstruction work on the building at the southwest corner of Broad and Wall Streets, directly opposite the offices of Morgan & Co. Over the walk, this work is in the progress. A protective scaffold has been built, and we learned from the work that he saw a stranger on top of this scaffold immediately preceding the explosion. The workman said he intercepted the stranger, who had no business to be asked to be on the scaffold, and asked him why he was there. The man replied, "I am looking for my horse." Ditch points out if he stayed a bit too close to witness the explosion, he may basically have been vaporised. Yes. However, some information about the horse was found. The hooves were recovered, admittedly from quite a large distance apart. They had been newly shod. Investigators contacted around 4,000 blacksmiths before they found Gaetano di Grazia in Manhattan. He couldn't give a clear description either of who had come to him to have them shod. All he could say was that it was just a young Sicilian man. The police decided to put him under surveillance in case he was involved. He wasn't. But they wanted to be careful. The bomb's working everything was carefully worked out. But there was nothing that couldn't be easily obtained. Tegan's theory is the horse did it, which would make this a suicide bombing by a horse. It would certainly confuse investigators, wouldn't it? The leaflets were examined, and investigators actually managed to work out what rubber stamp had been used to make them, because this company's stamp had a distinctive mark on the word "for." They visited 2,000 shops. There were no leads. So, there was plenty of pressure to find the perpetrators, but after 3 years, nothing was certain. Every left-wing and radical group possible was examined, from the US Communist Party to the entire Soviet Union, but nothing was found. At one point they thought Italian anarchist Pietro Angelo was involved, but he had an alibi, but they deported him anyway. Thousands of people were deported as a large-scale reaction to this attack and the ongoing terror campaign. Was this part of that terror campaign, or was this something else? We're going to get to that in a minute. The press firmly put the influence on foreigners. They called the bombing an act of war. They called foreigners alien scum from the cesspools and sewers of the old world that has polluted the clear spring of American democracy. Right. I was going to get to who did it, but Ditch Boys just put, would a horse bomber be the clip-clop killer? And honestly, I think that's basically the high point of tonight's stream. I don't think I'm going to offer anything better than that. The clip-clop killer. I feel that's sort of it. I guess I have to... Am I supposed to follow that? Okay, so... You can have that one for free, thanks. Yeah, I need a disclaimer on the stream, don't I? If you say it in here. So, who did do this? Well, there is a favoured candidate. So the BOI writers and historians and an FBI reinvestigation in 1944 strongly suspected the Italian anarchist group, the Galleanists. They were already engaged in a campaign of smaller bombings. When Americans sent an undercover agent to Italy to speak to the leader, Galliani, they found he'd fled in Italy from the Americans. However, earlier on, you may notice I said, was this really an anarchist ideological bombing? Well, there's a reason I say that. Because the favourite person to have done it is a man called Maria Buda. Now, he made bombs for the Galleanists. He had experience of timed dynamite bombs, used sash weights, and he was named by his nephew as doing it. We're going to... Conspiracy theory, it was market manipulation given how quickly trading was stopped and started. Yes, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Now, when I say he was named as having done it by his nephew, this is actually a third-hand account. So Italian anarchist Charles Poggi gave an interview to writer Paul Average in 1987, essentially in which Poggi said he was travelling with Buda's nephew, and Buda's nephew said, let's drive downtown and see my uncle's bomb. He took them to Wall Street. Again, that is a very large chain. You may not want to put much stock in that. But why? What's the reason here? Well, Buda had a very clear motive, and it was not just, or even remotely, the advancement of anarchism. Buda had friends, colleagues, and they were called Sacco and Vanzetti. They were anarchists, and they had recently been arrested and charged with robbery and murder in a very high-profile case. The Wall Street bombing has largely vanished from the American consciousness, but Sacco and Vanzetti do have some presence. And it's believed that this was a pure revenge attack. This was not an anti-capitalist statement. It was purely revenge for his friends. Did he do it? Well, shortly after the attack, he left for Italy and never came back to America, dying in 1963. He wasn't the only Galleanist offended by what happened to Sacco and Vanzetti. Others of them kept up a terror campaign, and at one point they blew up the judge's house. I should point out he did survive. Now, let's get to the crazy part. I know I like the crazy part. So everything I've told you so far is deeply rooted in reality. But there's a few weird things. So firstly, some writers still say this was an accidental explosion. Some writers have advanced a theory that because there was an office, the assay office nearby, that had 900 million in gold in it, this was an attempt to rob the office that went explosively wrong. Given the indiscriminate nature of the bomb, it's hard to say there was a specific target. Exactly. So, and now we get to Edwin Fisher. Oh, for the plot of Die Hard 3. Yes, exactly. Edwin Fisher is an amazing footnote in the Wall Street bombing. He was a tennis player and former broker, and an early suspect. He had written to the bosses of his past employer, "Get out of Wall Street as soon as the gong strikes at 3 o'clock Wednesday the 15th. Good luck." So police looked into him closely. It turned out that he was not predicting the bombing. He believed he received messages through the air, and often sent messages to everybody predicting bomb attacks. And out of sheer coincidence, for the first time, he was right. He was sent to an asylum as harmless but insane. So, not exactly Nostradamus. No, it's not exactly Nostradamus if you just do it over and over again, and amazingly one time it comes off. So I've said a couple of times that that's not really very well known. Did anyone know about that? I like to gauge these things, so I don't sound like an idiot. Apparently. You've seen Die Hard 3 for health. Okay, so we'll take a little pause before we get on to the next story. Now, these have been quite. These haven't been unpleasant stories. You know, there's no fascinating, excellent. And they've not been too bad. We're going to move on to a serial killer now. It's an interesting case. Nonetheless, there are a few brutal descriptions. If that's not your thing. This go on then. No, actually, wait till I'm like halfway through, because then we can all have a little laugh, and it won't seem so horrible. Now, but this is an interesting case. I'm going to posit you a scenario to start with, and then we'll go on. Ditch says a robbery does appear to be Ditch has gifted a sub to Creamy Holes. Let's not ruin the story. You say that now, you haven't heard the story. Creamy Holes. He is, of course, talking about donuts. There was a chap on the radio today, the presenter on the radio today, said he reckoned he could identify any donut he was given by which supermarket it had been sold in. Which strikes me as a sort of incredible challenge. I'm not really sure I could identify. I think I could identify a Domino's pizza from everywhere else. Oh, Rico has found the kissing Polly emote. Yeah, it's an excuse to be given free donuts. Exactly. If you're a DJ on the radio and you say, "Oh, I can identify supermarket donuts," we all know that tomorrow there's just going to be a truck backed up full of donuts. Thank you, everybody, for using the emote of the week, says Rico. Excellent. I reckon I can identify Cornish pasties. Please send them to me. I regret to say this, boy. I don't think there's many PR companies watching this. Honestly, if the Ginsters PR company is watching this, I will eat a Ginsters live on stream, every stream. I know there's other types of pasty. I'm open to negotiations on others, but Ginsters is 100%. Okay, so is that Elmo? I'm not really sure of my Muppets. Behind all evil, is that Elmo? The King Cobra's posted a Muppet in front of fire, which is brilliant. But now I actually have to read out what that Muppet is, and my knowledge is lacking. Ditch Boys got in. Oh, a big dinosaur mouth. Right. So the next story. Now let me give you a scenario. You are a young person. Your father has sadly passed away, and it is now down to you to sort through their belongings. A situation, most people face in their lives. Now, what would happen if, as you were sorting through your father's belongings, you discovered that your father was a previously unknown serial killer? Because that actually happened to somebody. So we are going to discuss the story of Manfred Seel. As it happens, says Rico. Rico, if that's happened to you, can I get an interview? Get in the Discord, we'll do an interview, I'll play it out. King Cobra, excuse me, I'll be right back. So Manfred Seel is known as the Hesse Ripper. Not the world's most imaginative name, I grant you. He committed at least 5 murders in Germany in the last decades of the 20th century, but nobody had any idea he'd done this until he died. So, I guess you could argue this is a story about a serial killer who got away with it. Which, again, I know a lot of people only get through true crime because there is some sort of justice at the end. I regret to inform you this is not that story. So, Manfred Adolf Seel. I should point out, for the benefit of the audience, when I say Seel, I mean S-E-E-L. I don't mean S-E-A-L. Nobody clip that. He was born on September 30th, 1946, in West Germany. He was an only child. Yeah, I'm not sure how I'd react sorting through a relative's belongings and finding jars of body parts. Exactly. And this is exactly what's about to happen. He was an only child, went through secondary school, worked as an apprentice in chemography in Frankfurt for a printing company. He did his 2 years military service. For a time he studied art and history at Goethe University in Frankfurt, but did not graduate. He married in 1973. They had a daughter in 1979. His wife lived until 2013. He wasn't quite the sort of person you'd call a lovely man. He was quiet, didn't attract much attention, but had a reputation for a violent temper. He was known to be a regular client of prostitutes. One reported to a special helpline that he was abusive and violent. He had a spell in rehab in 1996 for alcoholism. He also worked as a landscape gardener, played the saxophone, and was nicknamed Alaska because he always wore hot clothes in warm weather. And that was about as much as anybody knew. Sadly for him, in 2013 he was diagnosed with cancer of the esophagus, and in 2014 he died. Yeah, and this is where the story starts, because shortly after his daughter was faced with the difficult task of disposing of her father's possessions, she opened a garage he rented. She knew the garage was important to her father. People noted that even when he was really ill, he still came every Saturday. In fact, 76-year-old Hans Jerome Scherer told the Hamburger newspaper, 3 or 4 years ago, we had a barbecue in the summer, but we were a few seats short. The garage was open, so we brought out a few barrels to sit on. Yes, there were barrels in the garage, and the daughter needed to open the barrels to find out what was in them. Bits of people were in them. She rang the police straight away. And then everything exploded. Not literally. Police were able to identify that there was an arm. And that arm belonged to Britain Simone Diallo, who was a 43-year-old prostitute who had not been reported missing. But her fingerprints were on the police system. So when they found the arm, they went to find out where she was and discovered she was last seen alive in 2003. They were able to confirm that witnesses that Seel had been one of her clients. There were other parts of her. I'm not going to push this into the level of gory description you will often find. This isn't a gorehound stream, so we will skirt round a few descriptions that are in the book. Essentially, they were able to tell that she'd been tortured, cut up, and some of her remains kept in the barrel. And it wasn't just her. There were other remains. And such was the situation. In 2015, the state criminal police created Working Group Alaska. Yep, they named the police working group after his mate's dodgy nickname for him, to investigate Seel's crimes. Over recent time, Working Group Alaska has passed their work over to the regular homicide team, but in 2024 it is still ongoing. So far, Alaska believes Seel committed at least 5 murders. Detective Chief Superintendent Holger Thompson said, "This is definitely the most extraordinary case I've ever worked on. The violence is so despicable and unfathomable, it eclipses anyone else I've ever experienced." Police are still keen to find anyone who survived an attack and couldn't report it. All right. Thanks very much, Steve. Yes, boom on. Ditch says, I wonder if in his last days he considered destroying the evidence or if he wanted it found. What we're going to come to is the fact that Seel was an intelligent man. He must have known these items would be found. What we're also going to come to is why he kept them, the psychology of keeping items, and why he would visit weekly. He visited weekly because he was drawing on the memories of the power and pleasure he felt during the tortures. So he kept them because, in a sense, they were a vital memory that he had kept himself going with. Rico says, did you know if you soak the body parts in heavily salted water, they will not smell when decomposing? Thank you, Rico, for giving advice to any budding serial killers in the chat. Please do not do that. I recommend not doing that. But it's if you're saying if you're a crime writer like I am, I may find that very helpful, but only on a theoretical level. Yeah, no, brilliant. Keep going, Cobra. You'll sort it out. Yeah. The other day, Rico, there was a killer in Japan who put the body parts in with cat litter, which he believed would obscure the smell. So police sent out an appeal to anyone who knew Seel, as well as served with him during his compulsory military service. They had over 260 calls. So they had to work backwards. That would soak up the sweat. Nice, yeah. Could somebody put Rico on the watch list? So the police had worked out that what they had was a serial killer who had dismembered victims and taken parts of them as trophies. There was no favourite part. It wasn't all arms, it wasn't all legs. Sometimes they had a right leg, sometimes a left arm. Officer Frank Herman said if they could practically have made a new person if somebody was Dr. Frankenstein. Tegan says, I can tell you with authority that cat litter does not cover up smells. Ask my stinky cat. New way to get away with murder. Have a lot of stinky cats. Then nobody will smell the bodies. Not sure about that. I'm not sure the direction this stream's taking. Not sure about that. Dishwasher says, surely quicklime is the way to go. Tegan looks at Polly's bottom. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's why I have Polly. You can't keep cats in a garage. No. Well, I mean, what does Furball Farm count as? It's surely a warehouse. Hello, Thelonious. Nice to welcome you in. Yeah, you've arrived and we're discussing cats and whether they will help you dispose of bodies. Hypothetically. Yes, they will, Ditch. They will. They will. If Polly trips me down the stairs, you're just going to find my skeleton in a few weeks. So the police were trying to put this together. They actually had a search. Obviously, they went to search through the rest of his possessions. And they found something else you, as a child, do not want to find in your parents' possessions. They found 5 terabytes of violent pornography. 5 terabytes is quite a lot. This was back in 2014, so download speeds were quick, but 5 terabytes was still a lot. I think 5 terabytes is still a lot now. I don't think I even have 5 terabytes worth of storage for every single thing I do, including music and this stream, let alone allocate it to some hobby. However, as the police were trying to work out what he was doing, they came to a conclusion. This man was not doing things accidentally or on the spur of the moment. He hadn't been caught. They believe he planned everything out to a great degree. And it's worth remembering he had a family and kids as he was doing this, and they had no idea. Sadly, the DNA evidence on the body parts was difficult to obtain. So what do? You've got barrels full of body parts. You need to work out what's going on. Well, what you do is you go and try and find all the crimes where there's been a body with something missing. King Cobra has 12 terabytes. That's good. Do you do lots of films or stuff? Right. We have a body. We have a poll. What is worse to find in your parents' possessions, body parts or bad pornography? I mean, this is Step Back Radio 4 and the Moral Maze. We're really going into it tonight. I feel once again we reach a new low for the stream, but it appears very clear that body parts are going to win this. Nobody wants to find out that their parents were serial killers. Tegan says, did they say what his occupation was? Yes, they did. Do allow me to scroll up, because I forgot what I wrote. He was a landscape gardener. So, the police began to look for cases that may match. They began to look for where bodies were. Thelonious has used an interesting sort of emoji. Yes, I mean, those body parts are included, Thelonious, in the category of would you mind finding them? So they began to draw it in, and what they discovered was that the cases that looked likely to have been this man's killings were only in the local area. Right, they couldn't find anything outside his area. There was nothing comparable in Germany or in Europe. He also never travelled far or away for any length of time apart from with his family. So they became convinced he'd only operated locally. That enabled them to then look at every single murder they had on record since the Second World War and try and work out what murders may have been his. Now, luckily for everybody, there aren't many killers who steal body parts. So when you have body parts unanimously won. Hello, Polly. If you have a cluster of bodies found with parts missing in the same area at the same time, normally you can attribute all of those to the same person. New scene is go. So, what did they find? They found 5 possible people and quite a lot more. Yes, Tigger, definitely an awful shock for the family. You really can't imagine what they went through, and then having to have this go on. Tegan also says, if you did your garden, you might find your potatoes growing very well. Indeed. Polly is yes, no, yes, no, no, no. We want some strokes. Oh, we want strokes. Sorry, there will now be a pause as the owner of the house gives me instructions. I'm having a wash. What I do is I put my hand there, and if she headbutts me, I know she wants strokes. Now when she's had enough, she'll stop headbutting. That was a big shake, wasn't it? Loads of stuff flew off your whiskers there, didn't they? Has somebody just had a drink? I hope none of that went in my drink. Right. Sorry, we'll get back to the actual entertainment soon. As if you don't prefer the cat. Can you not sit on the mouse? I need to put the scene back so I can do some crying. Where's my mouse? Where's my mouse? There we go. Right, there we go. She is hunting for... The media training hasn't gone well. No, the media training has been a disaster. The media training has essentially been, can I have catnip 48 hours solid? Which I suppose, if you want to make a comment about the media, is probably more accurate media training. Being some sort of cocaine addict. Right, should we get back to the crimes? No, strokes. I think my audience want crime, Polly. I will take this opportunity to remind everyone that I'm dual streaming on Twitch and YouTube. Foxy's in YouTube. Hello, Foxy. And that the VODs from this stream are all uploaded onto YouTube for prosperity. Do please give me a like if you have a look. If you want to go back and revisit anything, can watch the old VODs. And there are also YouTube shorts in which I do all this stuff, but in 60 seconds at a time, which, if we're being honest, may be more people's patience level. Polly isn't on the shorts yet, but for business reasons she probably should be soon. I do feel stroking a cat that you can't see while there's a load of people watching me is a bad idea, so let's get to some crime. So, victims. They identified that Gudrun Ebel was 19 when her body was found in a shed in 1971. She was a cleaner and a carer. She had been strangled and her body had been left, but her uterus had been removed. This is believed to have been his first victim. 1971. Then a lady called Hattis was found murdered. She was a nurse. She worked in the same retirement home where Ebel had worked. We'll get to that. No, he wasn't. But no, he was a student, but not of medicine. He was. I have specifically got that information. He was at chemography, and then worked for a printing company. Yeah, take it back to the previous stream. Yeah. No, so the connection is Hattis and Ebel sometimes worked in the same retirement home. Seel worked there off and on as a cleaner. They may have mixed together and known each other. Both these Hattis suffered extreme torture, and parts of her were taken away. Neither murder saw Seel even remotely suspected. So yeah, two young women in the same retirement home. He was the cleaner, killed them both. Nobody had any idea. So that was 1971. The next known crime is 1991. He selected Gisela Singh, a 36-year-old prostitute who worked in a bar. She suffered from heroin addiction and HIV. She disappeared on June 14th, 1991, and her body was found under branches in a parking lot in Hofheim Forest. She'd been strangled and mutilated. Police started to hunt for a man who they thought knew her, who was called Hans. It was only when police worked out that Seel had killed her that they realised. Now, Ditch struck a very important point here. Is it atypical of serial killers to leave it that long? I have a special section at the end of this story, and one reason we're doing this story is because there was people who have spoken about the psychology of how this worked. So I'm going to be bringing you some professional quotes on what was happening here. And there's two immediate answers to that. The first is that they believe there are unknown victims and they are still hunting for them. The second is the type of psychology he had and how he could do this. So we'll get to that. This is one of the reasons we're doing the story, because I can bring you that information. Dominique Montrose disappeared on December 3rd, 1993. She was a drug addict and a sex worker. Her torso was found in a plastic bag and other parts in a bin on a highway. Her head was never found, but because she was killed in this area, in this time, and somebody had taken her head, it's believed to be Seel. Those are the definitive 5. There are several more tenuous connections, such as the murder of Pia Isabel Heim. She was a 27-year-old banker. Only her head was ever found in a garden in 1996. Given the fact somebody had cut her head off, police believe it was Seel. There was also a severed head found wrapped in foil in a dam. Again, that's connected to Seel purely because the likelihood of there being another killer who took trophies and bits of people in the same area at the same time is unlikely, but not impossible, and that's why it's only possible. Several missing prostitutes are connected to Seel. Julia Ella Schroeder was an 18-year-old suffering from drug addiction. She disappeared in 1998. No body has ever been found. Police believed it was murder, and they now consider Seel. Exactly the same situation happened to Gabrielle de Haas. She was 32, disappeared, no body found, presumed missing. Murdered. Christine Goldhagen was a prostitute who went missing in 2000. Seel was considered as the perpetrator of the murders Tristan Brurak in 1998, but police dug Seel's body up to get fingerprints, and those did not match their suspicion. And Ditch just brought up an interesting point. That's far from proof. It is far from proof. And the interesting thing about the Hesse Ripper is he definitely killed people. They found bits of people in barrels in his garage. So, there's no doubt he was killing people. The question is who, and there's an awful lot of supposition on who. And the search is still ongoing. Anyway, Wilde pronounced him the German Jack the Ripper. And now we're going to get into 2 sections. Right, Ditch, we'll come into that in a second. The first thing we need to come to is the slightly worrying possibility that when the police looked at the forensic evidence they had and the injury patterns on the bodies, it looked very much like there were 2 people killing. And that there is a second killer nobody knows about who worked with him. Good to know that, isn't it? I don't know. So how and why? This is the bit I think that we've been leading to. I'm just debating whether we're going to do this or whether I'm going to blow my nose. Just give me a second to blow my nose because I feel I'm not presenting properly. Thank you everybody for that pause. I feel a lot more comfortable, even if I don't sound it, so that's good. Welcome into YouTube King Cobra. Nice to see you in both. So, yeah, so likely 2 killers where they didn't know even know there was one. Oof. Yes. Yes, the terrible thing about this case is that there were probably 2 people and one is still unknown. So how did this happen? As you've seen in this story, Seel was killing people over 20 or 30 years. Yet he had a family and nobody had any idea. So he led a completely successful double life. How was he able to do this? So psychologists and criminal psychologists believe in his mind he regarded his normal life and his victims as 2 completely different categories of people. He may not even have considered his victims people at all. He may have considered them something else. So criminal psychologist Lydia Benek and former police profiler Axel Peterman spoke about the case. And I have a translation from a 2016 text. Sadism means that one is sexually aroused by the suffering, pain and humiliation of the other person, Benek said, but he doesn't care about the individual person because he's allowed to make them anonymous, Peterman explained. He's more interested in how people react to the torture and the torments that are done to them. He was able to see his family one way and his victims in another. There are normal people who have a happy marriage and still cheat on their wife. That these principles also work for serial offenders, but much more blatantly. He can love his family as much as he can, and he doesn't care about the victims at all. There's a dichotomy in the head that allows you... Yes, this is fun, not compartmentalisation. He's working on 2 levels. He sees humanity in 2 ways. As family and basically as cattle, and he's able to live a life in which the family can be treated sufficiently differently that they don't suspect. And obviously that's not true of everybody. Every serial killer, a lot of serial killers get caught. This man was in the case where his compartmentalisation was so great he could get away with it, and he got away with it. They also said those serial killers and sadists who are able to plan ahead are more likely to be in relationship and have families. The thing is, if you are not... yes, Joseph Fritzl would be a parallel example. The thing in this case is this man was not going out killing people at random in a rage. He was planning and working it all out. And if you can plan and work it all out, you have a demeanour which lets you run a double life. If you're your traditional free lunatic, you can't do that. His type of personality allowed for this. And then we have, why did he have a collection of body parts, as Ditch said? And would he have tried to get rid of those body parts so nobody ever knew? Well, he kept the body parts so he could relive the crimes which were important to him. Not the victims, just memories of the power and the fantasy. Yes, Ditchburg says rage-based serial killers don't remain at large for long. No, they don't. Serial killers get caught, and I think there would be a lot more serial killers but they are stopped by modern policing in many ways. The problem comes when you have, in this instance, a man whose rare personality provides a sort of camouflage. The more you can plan, the more chance you have of getting away with something, rather than just leaving it to pure luck. Criminal psychologist Helmut Curry gave a long interview on this, which was in something in Germany called Badischtung. I have a translation, which I did. I'm going to give you some. I've got translation of some sections, which I did. And I'm going to read it out because it's also relevant. He must have lived a perfect double life. Outwardly he was a gregarious, but in my opinion the part of himself that was more important to him was the dark side. Computers with 32,000 violent pornographic recordings were found in the basement of his house. You have to collect that amount first. I therefore assume that the dark side played a very central role in him, that he maybe even built up his other side, the social side, primarily in order to be able to cleverly cover up the dark side. I'm assuming he wasn't in a relationship in the normal sense, at least as far as empathy and emotionality are concerned. He has probably not shown himself to be normal in his closest environment, i.e. loving and caring. The problem is that because of the proximity, those around you often perceive such a character as normal because you just don't know him any other way. You think nothing of it. You want to misjudge reality. Since the dark side embodied an important part of his life, it is not surprising that he kept body parts of his victims, and this was probably important to him long after the crime. So, we're dealing with a man that was, for whatever reason, able to leave large gaps in his crimes and act in a way that did not arouse suspicion and therefore get away with it. And that is the Hesse Ripper. Still an ongoing investigation, even though we know he did it. Thank you, Tegan. The question is, will we ever find anything on the accomplice? Thank you, Foxy. Thank you for the applause. Hopefully that person will be one day caught, but there doesn't appear to be any single clue to them other than that they exist. Yes, Ditch. Yes, I think so. So we've done 3 very different crimes tonight. We've done the Barratry of the Mary Celeste. Once again, not the famous bit, the other bit. We've done the Wall Street Bombing of 1920, and we've done the Hesse Ripper. I think that I would be interested, chat, very interested. Which, if you were here on Tuesday and if you were here on Thursday, what did you prefer? Well, all right, Ditch. I want 2 polls. We'll do the animal poll at the end, so I know where I'm going in the future. Sorry about that. OBS is telling me it disconnected and reconnected. I'm not sure what caused that. Can you see me again? Am I live? Is this working? Internet blip like the yes, okay, you can see me. Excellent. Awesome. It's funny because my stream preview has gone to offline. Two polls, please, Ditch, yeah. Steve, you needn't worry about that. In any day now, I'm going to get an official confirmation that something has ended, and I will be able to cut my tabs in half because I will not have to have open all my work stuff. That will. I could probably close it all now, but I'm just waiting for the official line underneath being drawn. Refresh. Thank you. I'm just waiting for the official line. Oh, and then the tabs will be greatly reduced. Which poll first? Yes. Can we do the thematic poll first, please? And then I think the animal poll will be a good thing. We'll finish with that, so I can go and have a look. Oh, I'll go through it again. Do you prefer thematic streams, or do you prefer to grasshopper about? Please. I'm just seeing who we might raid. I have found another cat streamer, but you can't see as many cats all the time. So I fear I may raid. I don't really want to raid a cat stream that's got no cats. Yeah, if you could let me know, please. This will definitely influence what we do going forward. Did Polly eat the internet? I think this time it's the one thing I can't blame Polly for. Blame Polly, yeah. Okay, well that is very clear. Grasshopper is where you jump about all over the place and have different topics. Well, I'm glad I asked, because that is such a heavy tip to thematic streams. I had genuinely no idea. Perfect. Well, in that case, we will endeavour to do that as best we can. Thought tonight went quite well. Tegan, have I got the YouTube link? Oh, for my YouTube, yes. Can I post in chat? Can I post a link in chat? Oh, there we go. Thank you. It's already on my Nightbot. Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Right. Oh, that's quite clear. As we prepare the next poll, let me tell you what's coming up. So, if you went in at the beginning, this is what you need to know. Yes, I wasn't expecting every single person to vote for thematic streams immediately, but I can take the hint. So next week, everyone has Monday off for the bank holiday. If you're in Britain, if you're not in Britain, I'm very sorry. We have Monday off. Well, I mean, I've got Monday off anyway, but let's not talk about that. Tuesday, so we're not having a stream Tuesday, but Thursday is the first spooky stream, where I will endeavour to go on for quite a while. And I will be doing all old spooky vibes. Stories that are supposed to be true. They're probably not, but they're supposed to be true. But we're not going to push into whether they're real or not. We're just going to enjoy the vibes. Ditch has seen a preview. In fact, Ditch said of the preview, "Great, don't scare Polly." So yeah, I have to balance terrifying the cat and you. And I want to do one of those things. I don't want to do the other. Steve's just used an emoji of Karen Warbis, who is a singer here on Twitch. I think it's Karen_Warbis if you'd like to follow. Someone could give Karen a shout out, please. I'm sure you can do that, Steve. Do you have a follow? Karen does Halloween themed music streams, which, if I'm being honest, is entirely where I got the idea of doing a spooky stream. Thank you for giving the shout out. Originally the spooky stream was just supposed to be a Halloween thing, and then I thought, I want to do one now. So I can. It's my stream. I'll do whatever I want. We're doing a spooky stream. So we will enjoy that. Yeah, the plan is to go as long as people really want to listen, I think. When I'm going to dig out a lot of material. Hence why we're not doing the Tuesday. Next, animal for animal themed stream. I'm not sure. Right, two of those. I'm not going to spoil your vote, but I'd just like to point out, I know there are definitely true crime stories about two of those. I would be very surprised if there were true crime stories about the other two. So do choose wisely. What else is there to cover? If you do enjoy these streams, do please follow if you're interested. Sub if you should be so kind. But more importantly, if you know people who might enjoy this stream, please let them know. Word of mouth is very important, and the more people we get to come enjoy this, the better. And there's just the VODs on YouTube. We'll just run this out and then we'll go on the raid. Let me check to see if there are visible cats or if we go to Furball Farm on this stream. It's this stream. So S&J and Cats is a brilliant stream. It's very cleverly set up. It looks great. It's just that at the moment there aren't any cats. So I think we'll go to Furball Farm, which is just so many cats. It's like the spiritual opposite. I will get some more and different raid targets. Well, I think we can conclude that as there's no interest at all in an animal themed stream, thank God. Right, I appreciate everyone being here. Diggy's got to go to bed. I also have to go sooner rather than later. So, yeah, Sydney, I'm not sure I'm into that, to be honest. I'm not sure I'm into that. Let's go and see Furball Farm. Thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight. And I hope to see you on Thursday. If you know anybody who may like a spooky stream, please let them know. Thank you everybody for your comments. That's very great of you. Thanks for being in the stream. And hopefully I will see you Thursday for some surprises and some creepy stuff. Take care, everybody.